Well, honestly, seeing people getting hurt at work and sometimes not coming home to their families. And, it's those very hurtful scenarios where people don't make it home that really drives my passion for what I do every day.
Wow. And so have you seen that firsthand, or is it more kind of company wide stuff, or what have you seen?
I have unfortunately seen that firsthand. I've had to deal with a couple fatalities in my career, and that's something I never want to repeat again or never see again, actually. It's heartbreaking seeing what it does to families and everybody else around us. And the terrible thing is, we're all replaceable. It's as easy as finding somebody to come fill your job the next day. And the only person or people that are really hurt by losing somebody like that is the families of those workers. So for me, it's very important that we make sure everybody comes home at the end of the day.
Welcome to the Bridge Podcast. And today we have Andrew Soto. What we're trying to do is we're trying to build bridges in communication for safety leaders, leaders in other areas, doesn't matter what industry. And Andrew's got a great background because he was in more of an industrial setting, and now he's doing some commercial real estate, that kind of work. And I'm looking forward to having this chat with you, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Dan. Appreciate being here.
So you've been from LinkedIn. You've been working in safety for 13 years, but you've already had a couple of great awards, and you just announced something recently. I just saw a post this morning when I was looking at you. What you just were nominated for a new board. Where are you now?
Yes, sir. I have been appointed to BOMA Canada's Board of Directors, and that was recently appointed at the BOMEX conference in Vancouver in late September here.
Awesome! Congratulations, man!
Thank you
Congratulations.
so much. Thank you so much. It was a big month. I also won OH&S Canada Top 25 under 40 as well. So it's been a great September, and I'm really looking forward to see what the future brings and what the next chapter holds for me.
Well, it's interesting because you don't just win those awards because you know people. Like that's. And when I talked to you when we first talked about having this chat, you're an ambitious guy, and you've been working at this for I think 13 or 14 years now. Where'd you start?
So I started as an iron worker back in the day in Vancouver and built small buildings and the Olympic Village before the Vancouver Olympics in 2010. Then after that, I went to school to do safety. I went to BCIT, did a little bit of schooling there, and of course continued on the education further down my career.
Awesome. So you got the experience in the field before you became a safety advisor.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Spent many
Which
years as an iron worker back in the day.
I was talking to an old fella not so long ago, and I just said, "What do you have for advice for safety people?" And he said, "Number one, don't be a safety guy to start it off. Be something else, and
Exactly.
get that experience so that people know they can trust you in the field." So kudos to you for that. What drove you to get involved in safety, Andrew?
Well, honestly, seeing people getting hurt at work and sometimes not coming home to their families as well. And, it's those very hurtful scenarios where people don't make it home that really drives my passion for what I do every day.
Wow. And so have you seen that firsthand, or is it more kind of company wide stuff, or what have you seen?
I have unfortunately seen that firsthand. I've had to deal with a couple fatalities in my career, and that's something I never want to repeat again or never see again, actually. It's heartbreaking seeing what it does to families and everybody else around us. And the terrible thing is, we're all replaceable. It's as easy as finding somebody to come fill your job the next day. And the only person or people that are really hurt by losing somebody like that is the families of those workers. So for me, it's very important that we make sure everybody comes home at the end of the day.
You know what? It's interesting. You say that. It's when I do my keynotes, one of the things I often mention is that when a hero dies at war, or cop dies on the street, or a firefighter dies, in the line of duty, there's a big memorial, and there's a big write up, and there's a lot of conversation. But we're losing like a person a day in Canada,
It's
and
very sad.
there's no big write up, and it is the lost wives and the lost husbands and the lost children that that no one talks about. And it's just then all they're doing is they're building the country. All they're doing,
Exactly.
it's like all they're doing is just creating the world that we live in, and helping to do the hard work, right? So I appreciate your work, man. I really do.
Thank you
um
very much.
Tell me about a success that you just told me about a couple successes. So now, is this the first time? Because I think you were nominated last year, weren't you, for the top
I
25 under 40?
I missed the nomination last year, but recently won BOMA Edmonton's Emerging Leader Award earlier this year as well. So that was a huge win for us, and we celebrated that success back in April. And that success was attributed to our 5 years with 1.5 million work hours without a lost time. So
Amazing.
huge accomplishment there, and we're very proud of our teams all around for helping contribute to that great achievement and milestone. And we're very much looking forward to keep pushing on and see what else we can achieve.
I just celebrated another one of those last week, 2 weeks ago in Burlington. We had it was a hydro company that did 1.5 million, and it's like you don't just fall on that hill. You know,
Exactly.
that's
I
10
saw
years
that
of
on
hard work.
LinkedIn.
Oh, that's how we know it, right? There it is.
Yep.
That's well, congratulations. That's fantastic. What common misconceptions do you see about your role, maybe from outside looking in, or even from internally in different companies that you've worked with? What do people think about safety people that's wrong?
That's a really good question. Generally, sometimes safety people have been painted with the safety cop brush, and that has really hurt our industry because, more on the advisement side, we're trying to advise people on how they can protect themselves instead of hammering down on follow the rules. Generally, what I've found is if you can find something that'll trigger a reaction with that individual, such as if you're walking by and somebody's not wearing their safety glasses, you stop and talk to them and say, "Hey man, do you have kids? Like, do you want to see your kids graduate? Because if you get a thing in your eye, you're not going to see them graduate. You will lose your eyes." And you make it personal for those people. And then that really helps drive the message home that they want to work safe for themselves and their families, not just us in the company.
Yeah, yeah, good call. Good call. And I think there was initially, I mean, I started as a safety advisor, back in 2010. I was in a role for 5 or 6 years, and I had missed the safety cop years by 10 years, where it
Yeah.
was you were literally just out there to write tickets. Just
Yeah,
safe,
that's what it
be a
was.
cop, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and they had already started with it's time to get hearts and minds, boots on the ground, hearts
Yeah.
and minds. Like if you can change a guy's heart about safety glasses, about whatever, it is getting home safe to your family. So good. That's awesome. What about so how can we combat the issues? Are there still people thinking that we're safety cops?
There are still some of that out there, and those are more the old school guys. Some of the younger guys coming up know that we're there to help them, and they're really resourceful with coming to us with new suggestions or new ideas. And I really appreciate new ideas and new technology that's being brought forward to us.
So what kind of things do you do to help keep a crew working safely? Like it is, and we always have to remember that it's safe production, right? If it wasn't safe production, we would just stay home,
Exactly,
because
exactly.
we have to produce something. Otherwise, there's no money, money changing hands, and money's why we're there, right? I mean, that is part of the deal.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
so what kind of strategies do you have to keep your crews working?
So some of the strategies that we use could be behavior-based safety. So making sure our workers are watching out for one another, just making sure everybody goes home at the end of the day. And then, of course, we have various policies and procedures and safety equipment that we give out to all of our staff to make sure that they're working safely and that they come home. We give them as many resources as they require in terms of training or extra, sorry, extra training opportunities, extra classes, any additional equipment that they may need, and really just the resources that they're requesting. We try to fulfill all those requests so we can keep them in the field working safely.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Um, what kind of trends are you seeing in the industry that you like with all those resources coming in? I'm going to ask you the opposite too, so be
Ah,
ready.
all right. So I guess some of the trends that I've liked to see are decreased injuries in terms of like personal hand injuries and stuff like that. One of the initiatives that we've launched is cut resistant gloves for work with tools or utility knives and things like that. And we've seen a drastic reduction in hand injuries just by partnering with great companies out there that make wonderful cut proof gloves. So we've seen a drastic reduction in hand injuries just based on the PPE that we provide.
Do you have pushback on wearing those gloves? Or is that one of those
We
things the guys just go, you know what, this just makes sense, and they're not uncomfortable?
A little 50-50, honestly. Some guys loved the initiative that we did and loved knowing that we care about them enough to evaluate many different types of gloves and give them the best options that we found. And then there's other guys that are more old school that are just happy with their hands and are willing to get to work like that. So it's a little mix between the two, but generally it was very well received. And people always appreciate when you're thinking about them and then can offer them better products than what they've been offered before that.
Yeah, I remember seeing that even with safety glasses that came in that were, they used to be the really kind of heavy gogglish glasses, and they're now, I mean, they're comfortable. They're like sunglasses, they're comfortable, and you wear them, and it's not, you can get tinted. Some sites you can't wear tinted because you want to be able to see people's eyes. I get that, but if you get safety glasses that are actually, double as sunglasses, I mean, we used to wear them all the time outside of work, just because
Oh,
they look
exactly.
decent, right?
The
Yeah.
technology with PPE has come so far, and especially with women's work clothes, they're offering like tailored coveralls now that are more fit to women's shapes and stuff so that everybody is comfortable with what they're wearing and it's not oversized or uncomfortable or cumbersome for them to use. So it's nice seeing that the world's adjusting to the female side of the workforce in construction as well.
And so what kind of numbers are we seeing now, like on your sites, in terms of, like, let's say out of 100 average 100 workers, how many men, how many women?
Honestly, on the worker side, it's still very male dominated, but on the executive side at Harvard is predominantly women, women executive leaders on the executive side. So it's
Really?
quite a dynamic here at Harvard where the general workforce and operations is predominantly male, but the majority of our executive leadership is actually female, which is great to see. So it's a
Isn't that interesting?
fantastic dynamic in the company here, and it's almost very split evenly for men versus women across the whole company.
Andrew, so I've done a lot of conversations. I've had a lot of conversations with guys out there in the field, and it is, I mean, mainly it's the same answer. It's always, typically it's 95% men that are out there in the operations side of things, or the construction side of things. And one of the trends we're seeing is that there's a huge mental health crisis with men in construction, especially. I think the numbers I saw out of Saskatchewan, where men in construction are 7.5 times more likely to attempt suicide. Like, heavy things to think about. Are you seeing challenges with mental health? Are there things that you're challenges that you see coming up with some of your work, some of your crews, some of your people? Have you heard about anything? What do you know about that?
Definitely. And I've honestly dealt with some mental health challenges myself, having worked out in the field for many years in the family at home. And nothing ruins your day faster than a bad phone call from home because you can't go back to deal with anything and you're stuck up north or somewhere else that is miles and hundreds of miles away from your family. And it's really tough on people, especially, in those unfriendly scenarios where you get a bad phone call from home and it ruins your day. And I unfortunately have heard of people taking their own lives on site. And it is absolutely heartbreaking that people have to go through that. And I'm a huge proponent of trying to seek help where there is help available. And there are options out there for people. And, there's many people to talk to. So I'd encourage people to go reach out and get those resources and seek that help. And it is okay for men to talk about their feelings and, open up on that. Traditionally, it's always been men should be the strong and silent type, but I'm glad the world is changing the dynamic and now it's okay to not be okay. And that is a really powerful message, especially for all men out there and, everybody included, that it's okay to not be okay and it's okay to go find the help that you need. It's okay to ask a coworker to blend an ear for a minute if you're having a bad day at home with your spouse or whatever. And I'd encourage everybody to have someone to talk to because this is a huge crisis in our world right now, especially with our soldiers that have come home from Afghanistan. There's huge PTSD crises out there and mental health crises. And I really think we should talk about this more and get this more in the open because it's something that's always been looked down on where men shouldn't have these feelings. But everybody does have these kind of feelings, and mental health is very important. That we need to get everybody strong again, Exercise is a great tool to help you feel good again as well. But it's just so sad seeing people downtrodden and beat down when they're at work, and all they can do is try to focus on their job. But it's hard because if you have family issues in the back of your mind, you're not focused on your task. And honestly, that leads to people getting hurt at work unintentionally because their mind is somewhere else while they're using a saw. Next thing you know, their fingers are missing. And I have seen things like that happen where I've interviewed people after an incident and they said, you know what, Andrew, my head was just not in the game. I had a bad phone call with my wife and she's leaving me and I just wasn't in it. And this is what happened. So it's very tough on people with those mental health challenges because it can lead to accidents at work. And, maybe it's time that we open up that conversation. And if you see somebody that's in that kind of shape, just let them know, hey man, are you okay? Maybe it's time for you to go home or go see somebody today, and we'll take it as it goes. So
Good for you. Thank you. That's well said. Nothing else, nothing else really to add. I was talking to a buddy of mine through this podcast. His name's David Hermanson. We had a nice chat, and he was talking about the reason that men don't reach out about mental health, and I thought it was really interesting because it was a perspective that sometimes things are just true. You just feel that they're true, and you're like, yeah, that actually really makes sense, because it is. I was brought up, I'm a 72 version, right? So I was brought up with a guy that definitely wasn't sending me to the hospital for stitches if I'm in the middle of a job, like it just wasn't happening, and so everything had to be tough, and I always thought, well, it's just because we got to be tough, we got to show ourselves tough. Even in football, it's kind of where I thought I got my mentality, but what he said was men also don't talk about when they're struggling with something because maybe they don't want their team to feel like they can't be counted on. And I think that there's something there,
that's very true. And honestly, it seems that people don't want to share their feelings because maybe prospectively they would lose respect of their peers or their coworkers or be seen that they can't handle stress. And it creates a very tough dynamic in your own head where you don't want to talk to people about this because you don't want to be seen as less or respected less or thought of as less and thought of as you can't handle stress. So that adds additional layers of stress onto that individual where you don't have anybody to talk to, and it's very tough to do this by yourself. So
100%. 100%. Well, thank you. That's I appreciate that conversation. What do we need to see more of in the industry?
I would love to see more owner buy-in. A buy-in for safety starts from the top and goes all the way down. If the owners of the organizations aren't bought into safety, it's very tough to get the entire organization bought in. Quite often what I see is the supervisor's lowest standard is that worker's highest standard. So the supervisors need to raise their level, and so everybody can raise their level of awareness and safety as well.
So explain that. Explain that. That's a statement that I feel like needs to be expanded on.
So if the supervisor's expectation is here at their lowest, then the workers will be exactly where theirs is at, and that's their highest. So if you ask somebody to go climb a shaky ladder, let's say, for example, and you accept that as the supervisor and you would expect your worker to accept that, that worker is going to accept that and probably not raise any questions to that. And so we'd encourage that worker to actually step in and say, no, I'm not comfortable doing that, or that is unsafe work. And that will raise everybody's risk awareness a little bit higher, and that'll create safer work environments.
So the right to refuse unsafe work, obviously in Ontario, which Alberta is the obligation,
Yeah,
as we know, right? Which is huge.
it is.
I took that conversation to Nova Scotia, and I was quickly told that the obligation, it's only a right, and that any worker that wanted to keep his job because there wasn't enough work. or
Yeah,
just not do it, right? So that's where you're saying the leader has to raise their expectations. That generally,
exactly.
and not all leaders. I mean, obviously, we're not talking about everybody. I've worked with
No,
a pile of people that just have the leadership has higher expectations for worker safety than the workers do. By far.
exactly,
You
exactly.
know,
And that high standard brings the worker standards up even higher. So it's amazing when we can get supervisors and owners that are bought into the program that'll invest in the safety program. Because quite often, what I've found is people are a little shy for investing into safety because they don't see a return on that investment. The return is sometimes hidden in the fact that everybody went home safe at the end of the day today. We didn't have a fatality today. We didn't have a medical aid where somebody lost an appendage today. So they don't see that side of it. They only see the cost. They don't really see the savings of we just saved people's lives today. We made sure that people got to go home to see their families today. That investment is huge and worth everything that we have.
yeah, exactly. I always used to liken that to being an offensive lineman.
Hmm.
Like your best day as an offensive lineman if nobody ever says your name.
Yeah,
Right, because as soon as they say your name, something went wrong, and it's like it's like you put all this money into safety. You want to have you want to make sure your crews are safe. It's if it's gloves, if it's glasses, if it's engineering, safer machinery, whatever it is. Obviously procedure, and yeah, to have that to not be talked about, because it's working.
exactly.
Well, it's working. That's good, right? Yeah, interesting.
Exactly, but they will always talk about when a big incident happens, and if a fatality happens, what is that going to cost us? And
Yeah,
that's always what it comes down to is what is this going to cost us?
yeah, exactly. What do you want to see less of in the
I
in?
would love to see less injuries overall, and of course, less fatalities, and especially young workers. Young workers are one of the highest groups that get hurt in all industries, and that is very troublesome. I have a young daughter that's going to be coming into the workforce in a few years, and I will do everything I can to make sure she's safe at work. And I would love if other industries took safety seriously as well. Quite often, the restaurant industry is overlooked, and people are put into situations with no training and no experience and maybe given cleaning chemicals that they don't know what to do with. There's no MSDS sheets on them. And I've heard of people getting bad chemical burns from restaurants just because they've been told to wipe this down with bleach or something to that regard. So I'd love to see a general safety awareness come across all industries and so we can keep everybody safe at work.
It's interesting you say that. We used to joke that it was more dangerous working at McDonald's than it was working for Shell.
Yeah,
And it probably, and I'm not, I can't, liability wise, I don't know. McDonald's maybe is a very safe place to work, but I would almost guarantee that it's not as safe as the oil fields were because it was the standard was so high, you know.
exactly. Or residential construction sometimes as well is generally overlooked with some of the safety stuff. So seeing those guys get up to more higher standard would be great to see out there in the industry.
Yeah. Good call. Good call. What, tell me about one of your favorite mentors. You don't have to tell me his name unless you want to or her name, and tell me what you learned from them.
Did have a favorite mentor. His name was Adam, and I worked with him back in 2013 on a mining project I was on. And he taught me how to, well, just get information from unlikely sources and just to keep your ears open to the field and make friends out in the field. Because if you make friends out in the field, people will start feeding you information. And it's valuable information. It's always good to know more than the next guy. So, always making friends and having some information being fed to you is always a great tactic.
That's true. It was the excuse I had for smoking cigarettes out in the field for years. Just like because you get more information in the smoke pit than you do in the field, right?
More
And
business is done in the smoke pit and the golf course than anywhere else.
that's right. That's right. I still remember the smell of it too. Okay, that's great. So is it just one daughter you have?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And how
Just the
old is she
one.
now?
She just turned 13 back in August.
Amazing. So she's a few years away from moving out, maybe 15, depending on economy and everything else, and that's okay. But before she moves out of your house, what three rules would you like her to follow? Like to know so that she internalizes them and she takes them as her own rules.
A really good question. Always be polite and be professional. Always look your best. and always be prepared.
Okay, good. Wow, you had those fast. That's good. Andrew, it's been an awesome conversation. What is there anything else you'd like? Well, what advice would you have for people going into the safety field, or even into construction? Like, what advice would you have for people that are coming on the site for you?
That's a great question, Dan. So, new safety people or new tradespeople?
Let's go. Let's go. Generally speaking, or specific, you choose.
For the new safety person coming out there, I would say listen. Listening is the biggest thing in asking questions. If you don't know how something works, go ask the people that work in that trade. If you don't understand why they're doing a certain thing for a crane lift, go ask that crew. And then by asking questions, you'll get a better understanding of how the industry works or how that certain task works. And that'll give you better insight. And it also helps just making friends out there. Because again, once you start making friends, you get a little more information. People become more comfortable with you, and then they'll start to share, and it opens doors for you down the road.
Awesome. Awesome. What about tradespeople?
Trades guys, I would say the best thing to do as an apprentice, try to get paired up with a really good journeyman and then learn their skills. Again, listening is a very key aspect of any industry, I would think, and especially when it comes to those trade things. Listen for the secrets from those old timers. A lot of the information and those secrets that those old timers have are not getting passed down. So we need to learn those little tips and tricks from those guys where we can before that information is lost.
Good call. Good call. So mentorship.
Mentorship, exactly. That's a big
Awesome.
one.
Thank you very much. Any other messages you want to give to the audience?
Stay sharp, stay safe, and we'll see you guys out there.
Awesome. Andrew, you've been a great interview. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your professionalism and keep on doing what you're doing, man. It's awesome to see you out there. All right.
Thank you so much.
Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.